Podcast number 17.
Number 17.
Pulling back the curtain with Big Puddle Films and Jason Satterlund. Thank you for joining us. You're in town for how long?
About a month.
About a month.
I'm at the end of the month, but yeah, I have been in town for almost a month. Yeah.
All right. Looking at some a new film that you might be doing up in here.
We just finished it. Yeah,
you just finished it.
We've been shooting for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And tomorrow is our last day.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm at the end, and my voice is a little
jacking an hour of your time out of here.
Yeah, well, this it worked out pretty well because we had an unexpected day off because we were supposed to shoot up here. A hilarious note, the story we're telling, a lot of it takes place in the Middle East, and we were hoping to fake Spokane for Iraq. We were going to shoot in Moses Lake, and it's like, it's snowing, and it's wet and rainy, and it's like, well, it doesn't look like Iraq, so we're going to take this one little scene and shoot that down in LA. So today ended up being like an unexpected day off, but I'm on the tail end of a marathon shoot, so my voice is a little bit shot because, you talk, as a director, you talk endlessly about, yell and like, go, action, and my brain is a little bit oatmeal-esque because 1,000 decisions have to be made.
I'm not a director, but this is gonna be like one of those movies where we start at the end
and work our way backwards,
all the way back.
Like Memento, Chris Nolan's breakout film.
Doing that. That was like one of the, at least to my knowledge, one of those first movies where like you just wrecked the whole movie, but they didn't, So, let's talk a little bit about your background.
Mm-hmm.
Were you Spokane guy?
Well, for about a minute, I guess we should start at the top. I'm a film director.
Yes, we should start at the top.
Yeah, film director. I've been directing films for about 20 plus years, professionally anyway. I've lived all over the country. I've worked all over the world. Probably worked in about 30 different countries. I've done feature films, music videos, commercials, training films, live events, documentaries. Like, it's a pretty wide swath of work. I'm initially from Portland, Oregon. Grew up there. But when I got out of school, there wasn't any work there. Now they shoot more there than back in the day. But for whatever reason, I didn't go to LA. I don't know why back then, but I ended up in Nashville, which is where I started.
So Portland to Nashville.
Went to Nashville, lived there for about a decade, and started with music, a lot of music stuff. So. Because Nashville is the epicenter for lots and lots of music.
Sure. Yeah, lots of. I think people think country, but actually there's a bunch of different.
Country and Christian music are both based there, but a ton of Sheryl Crow lives there. Steve Winwood lives there. A lot of old rock and roll.
Old country / what back in the day would have just been called acoustic rock. I mean, there's a lot of those artists I know there.
Yeah. It's.
Did you have a job waiting for you when you went back to Nashville, or you just packed your bags and?
At that time, I was starting my career, so and in film, there is no set path. Just any way you can get there, you get there. So I didn't know what else to do. I'd gotten out of school, I had majored in video. I always wanted to make movies and stuff, but I didn't know anyone who did that. I didn't have a relative in the business. I had no mentors. And I was working a dead-end job at a computer store, pretty frustrated.
So I'd love to unpack this part.
Absolutely.
One of the parts of this podcast, whether people want to go be a lawyer or a doctor or a film director, or nobody in my business had, been in the wealth management industry, is I think for a lot of people, how do I get started? How do I take the first step? I think one of the things people would say is just take a step.
Yep.
Right? Don't overanalyze it. Don't overthink it. That being said, walk me through as best you can go back and unpack, because I think we all write a story after the fact. That a lot of times we just did some. But what was going through your mind when you left Portland to go to Nashville, and what were some of your first steps to just get the slightest door open? Or when you land in Nashville, just start blasting resumes out. Walk me through the start. I think the starts are always fascinating.
Well, it's probably important to know that being a film director, there is no path.
Right.
If you want to be a doctor, they pretty well tell you how to do it. You go to school for X amount of years, you do residencies and internships and all this stuff, and this amount of school. There's a way to go. Right. Of course, you've got to pass boards, and you've got to
it's its
interview.
Own challenge.
There is those, but for film directing, it's the amount of people I know who just like, well, I don't know, I was doing construction one day and someone asked me to help on a movie set and here I am. Like that happens, but there's also other people like myself who like clawed tooth and nail to get
you wanted it, you just didn't know how.
Mm-hmm. My whole life, ever since I was 4 years old, I like the big film that was an influence on me was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Like that one fueled my imagination. I wanted to create magic like that and do stories like that. Had no idea how to do it. Didn't know anyone in it. My parents, my mom was a conservative Christian, woman, raised us in this very conservative church where movies are considered tools of the devil. So like I was strongly discouraged from pursuing any of that.
Interesting.
My dad was a machinist, so he had, I don't know, it was like, what, movies?
Sounds frivolous, right?
Yeah, like
he's clocking in and working hard and clocking out. And
So I didn't even know about going to a film school. Like what? So when I get out of school, I had no idea what to do. The only place
how did you keep, right before we get to that, how did you keep that fire? Was it just too strong of a fire? How did you keep the fire burning when maybe on one hand people weren't fostering it, or to your point, maybe even discouraging it? How did you keep true to that vision?
That's a great question. I don't exactly know. Once I discovered it, I just couldn't let it go. It was so, I wanted to do it so bad I couldn't. And it was basically the one thing that was denied to me. And I think that made me want it more. You can't have a cookie. Well, I didn't want a cookie until you said I couldn't have one.
Cookie,
So it was sort of like that. And even to my childhood, my dad wouldn't let me, when you hear interviews with other film directors, oh, my dad gave me a Super 8 camera when I was a little kid, I didn't get that. Like my mom strongly discouraged me from doing it. I wanted to audition as a kid to be a child actor. Said, nope.
Did they know that it was still burning within you, or did you kind of keep it quiet?
No, they knew. And the first time I ever got my hands on a camera was when I could drive. And I don't know if they still do it, but the public cable access channels, I don't know if it's such a big thing now, but they used to offer free equipment. You shoot it and you can put it on their channel. And if you just have to take the little course to learn how to do it. So when I was finally able to get my hands on a camera was that. I drove myself to the thing, took the class, was able to shoot the video. Well, that was the first time I was able to do it. I went to college. I got to meddle a little more. But the passion was always there. And it felt like dragging my way through inch by inch towards the goal. So I'm in Portland. I know what I want to do. Working this job that I hate because it's not what I love, and I had no one to give me any advice, and I met this guy who was in the music industry, and he said to me, I did put out an album when I was in college of music, and he goes, and I had an investor, right? So there was some professional musicians on it. I sent it to him, and he goes, so I listened to your album, and I know you spent some money on it. And, it was fine. It was professionally done. But then you sent me this short video you made for your senior's college thesis that you made for $0. It was called The Adventures of Carl and Lloyd.
Now, who is this person and why were you sending things to him? Is it to try to get your music deal?
No, he was a performance consultant. He worked with people on their stage show.
Gotcha.
So I had hired him to help me with my concerts. And
how did the video end up in his hands?
I just sent it to him. Yeah, after I'd hired him, we'd become friends. This is my
creative.
Mm-hmm. Hey, check this out. I just did this. This is kind of fun. And it was a silly little video. And he goes, I looked at that video and I was astounded by what you did for no money. To give you an example of what I did, I was one of the actors in it because I couldn't find anybody else. So I would literally put the camera on a tripod and run around it. And because there was no camera operator, so I'd run around and act the scene with somebody to come around. And it's one of these days I'll put it online. Anyway, he was like,
we get a link to it with the podcast bonus content.
There are multiple videos I can link to, yeah, for sure. Which
not that one.
So he goes, I don't know if film's what you want to do, but that's what you should be in. Music is fine, and it's definitely similar. It's an artist field, but you need to be doing video. And I don't know where you are in your life, but you could try Nashville. And I was like, I have no other options. I don't know where else to go. So he said, well, I own a house in Nashville. There's a guy living there. He needs a roommate. You interested? I'm like, definitely sign me up. I packed my bags. I knew no one. I didn't even know my roommate. Like, I knew him, but he was working all over the world. So
if I can, because I like to try to unpack some nuggets for people. I think this is, and what I hope out of this podcast when I did, I mean, it has the parts around wealth management, but and there's so much that goes into this, obviously speaks to your character, but I think for a lot of people, they feel beaten down. They feel like they have, to your point, have no options, and they use that, can use that a lot of times as negative self-talk to feel defeated, or, hey, now I know Jason and he's got this success, or Tim built this firm, or the lady we had on just before built this amazing real estate company. And I doubt they were ever at this place where there had no other option. But really, that level of lack of options, desperation, whatever, is almost every person I've run into that's had great success had that moment and just rolled with it.
And that has happened to me multiple times, to be honest, because
well, that's probably true too.
The way I see, like most of us view life and careers and things like that as a mountain. We always look at it like that, right? Where you're climbing it, and if you've ever, I'm a mountaineer, so I've climbed some mountains. So like you get up to a point often where you get to a false summit, and you see another one off in the distance. That assumes everything's always going up. I don't actually think that's an accurate portrayal of the way life is. I think life is more like we're ants in a plowed field that's flat with ridges in it, right? So we, as our little ants, we're traveling across this field, and we look up to the molehill that's in front of us. Now, when I was 21, that was just getting my foot in the industry. If I could just get to that summit, I'll achieve something, which I did. I was able to, like, my first job was, I worked on a music video that was 5 days long. We worked 20 hours a day. I was paid $50 a day, and I was happiest I've ever been. Like,
so this is your first job in Nashville.
First paid job.
There were some things. I know I want to get back to your life philosophy because it's interesting. How'd you get that job? So you land in Nashville.
Didn't know anybody.
No options. Don't know anyone.
Yeah, and because I had no mentors and if you don't have a mentor when you're starting out, you're really doing yourself a disservice. Like I teach a lot and speak a lot at different events, and that's the one thing I try to tell people when they're just starting is find a mentor, because you could shortcut a lot of things. They can give you advice and tips and introduce you to people, because it's that knowing people is the name of the game. The more friends you have, the better. My philosophy of life is he who has the most friends wins, because that's how business grows. I'll get to more of that in a second, but I got there, I didn't know anybody. So I started sending my resume out to all the film houses. No one was interested. Once I ran out of that list, I started to try to trick these people into sending me information about their company, pretending I was a client. And that didn't work. So then I started calling people and just saying, look, I don't even care if you have an internship open. Just let me be in the room where it's happening. Like, I'll stand in the corner and watch you work. That's all I want. Like, don't pay me. Please, somebody take a chance on me. And finally, one guy said, you just want to watch me work? Okay. Just that's how desperate I was to get my foot in the door. Because, when you're trying to go towards a certain goal, if I'm over here where I was repairing computers for a living, I'm not even on the right ladder to get to the goal. Right. Like, it'd be one thing if I was working in film as a production assistant on the lowest level. At least I'm climbing in the ladder towards the correct place. But I was over on a different ladder watching other people climb up. And that was like
ladder sphere, to use your analogy, if I may steal your field, but also understanding, to your point, it's rarely a linear path.
No, especially in film. Yeah, so it's just all over the place.
Keep moving, keep movement. Again, within the right sphere, to your point about computer thing, but just and be willing to give of your time and value to try to get that chance. So this guy says, all right, okay, you may be creepy kid that wants to watch me. Yeah. I'll go for it.
And I sat down there, and he was editing, and I would just sit behind him and watch him work. It was great. I mean, I would work. I waited tables at night, so I'd have some income, and then during the day, I watched him work, and I just asked him questions, and he was gracious to me. And He said, well, if you want to make yourself useful, why don't you learn how to do computer animation? So I said, okay, great. So I just sat at a computer and read through the manual and didn't know anything about it. So I just started doing that. And then he goes, well, I got a music video next week, pays $50 a day. You want to do it? And that's where I started getting work. Now back to the analogy of the field, that was cresting the top of that. You know, I got to there and I started doing really low budget music videos just as a grip. Now, I could have stayed there forever doing that because there's plenty of low-budget music videos in the world. What that means is once you cross that initial hump, you can end up in a trough. That first goal can end up just a rut for you, and you can end up staying there. I think every career is like that. You can, in every step along the way, no matter what goal I've achieved, I got some more income. Like, for example, I know so many guys who direct commercials for a living and get paid great. You know, they work for Nike or Microsoft and they hate it because it's not creative. It's corporate. They've got nice houses, but they wish they were doing something that actually fulfilled their soul. They crested a hill, but that hill, they got over the other side of it back into the other trough of the field, right? Right. Now you can go back a few steps. Doesn't mean you're going down the mountain, down the hill. You can go back to where you originally loved maybe music videos and work back in there. It's not a bad thing. Or you can keep going forward up the field. Like it's a lateral move sometimes. If that makes sense. If my analogy tracks.
I mean, I was practicing law, went to law school, told everyone I have no interest in practicing law, took a job at a big firm. It was as horrible as I would have thought it would have been before I would have said I want to go. But, you know, I was getting paid 6 figures plus. It's more money than maybe most my family members had ever made in their life. And I was 25, 6. And I took a pay cut to come back to $24,000 a year for 1 year and then full commission job here. And here I am, again, not to make this about me, but been top of my class in high school and college and law, one of my tops in law school, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm making what? 19 grand. All my colleagues have passed me by, and it was that step back to again chase those passions, because I think again, just my own personal experience sounds like yours too. Like those are those moments you have to be willing to do and embrace that are part of that process to get where you want to go. They can look like steps back, and in some ways they are. I mean, certainly financially, sounds like you said you could have done that, but so you decide to not be content there. Right. What's your next move?
From there, I went and I started doing a lot of corporate work, which is it was such a funny moment in my life, and it led to a big breakthrough for me. I started doing corporate work, which was, number one, shooting live events, which is very boring. Like you're sitting on a camera riser in the middle of a giant auditorium when AT&T is having their big convention, or whoever, some big companies having it, and you're I felt like the original Karate Kid, remember back in the day, wax on, wax off. Yeah. You're panning left and you're panning right, watching a speaker go left and right across the stage. If you're lucky, maybe they'll have a band at the end of the night with a party, and you actually get to shoot some music. And you set the auditorium up until 1:00 in the morning the night before, and you got to be there at 8 for the morning meeting. Yeah. Which you're so tired, and you have to wear a suit and tie. So and you're, oh God, it was, but like. And then I think before we started recording, I had to shoot these things called smiling faces videos, which were called, I think some people call them happy face videos or highlights videos, where you essentially are running around with a camera the entire convention, shooting everybody. And you have to you can just shoot the action, or you can get involved and get them to smile and dance, because that's even better. If you can get them to dance,
getting all the suits to give you the hang 10 sign,
or get them to get the CEO to give you a little dance, a little jig.
Yeah, oh man, are always awkward.
Cut that to music and things.
Nobody wants to see me dance, I can tell you that.
But your employees love it. Like if you can show it at the end of the week, because at the end of the week they show the video. So you're shooting all day, you're editing all night. It's just, you're a machine cranking out the video, and then you show it the last night, and people's happy, everybody's happy. Well, I did a ton of those, and I ended up being really good at them, so I'd get hired for more of those, and I got really burnt out, because I was very miserable. I was really like angry all the time and beaten down and just, yeah, I'm working in film. I'd crested the hill in the field and I found myself in a rut. I'm sure I'm working, I'm making money, but I don't like what I'm doing. I feel unfulfilled. And what I didn't realize looking back is, number one, the old law is 10,000 hours of practice makes you better what you do. Well, I'm sitting there, wax on, wax off with a camera, following a speaker back and forth. I was getting very good at running camera.
Trying to make boring things look interesting.
Yeah.
So then what could you do with an interesting thing?
Sure.
Yeah.
I realized I was starting to get better than my film counterparts. People I knew who were doing movies and stuff. I was actually out shooting them because I was getting such good instincts, shooting action, moving either handheld, watching them around an event, as I'm documenting it, or on stage, learning what their body language is going to do. Sometimes the speakers on stage would watch me shooting them and they would try to like get out of my shot. So it would become like this, it's sort of like, it's probably like playing sports, where you're trying to counter somebody coming down a field.
Sure.
You start to learn body language. I was getting really good at it. I was also getting good at
like
editing.
You hired me, buddy, to get you on camera.
Yeah.
Stay in my frame.
Right. I was also getting really fast at editing. Like cutting things together really quick. Yeah. And I was getting my 10,000 hours. And I was doing it on something that ultimately wasn't that important in the grand scheme of things. Instead of falling on my face doing a movie, which is what I wanted, I was doing this. And the people I was shooting, I met Zig Ziglar. I got to meet, Bill Cosby. He's, not a big...
It's all right.
Yeah, but
everybody loved Bill at one point.
Many, many, many famous musicians I was working with and shooting. I got to meet...
as part of these corporate things?
Yeah, because they'd have these speakers come in and speak.
Yeah.
Motivational speakers, entrepreneurs, CEOs. I met astronauts. I met like business CEOs. I got to listen to their stories and listen to them talk. I got to meet Stephen Covey for a thing. And I'm sitting there. It was so surreal because I'm frustrated that I'm not where I want to be, and I'm listening to their stories, basically I was right where they were, and I'm getting better as I go, and I'm getting this kind of inspiration.
Twin tremendous points to make note of, though. We'll talk about it in our industry where it takes 5 years, 2,000 hours, let's say 10,000 hours. I mean, it is whatever it is, whether it's experience, paying dues, the wax on, all these soft skills, indirect experiences become so invaluable, right? And I think people are always trying to, again, pretend like that's not going to apply to them when they should just embrace it. But the second point then is you're there, if I'm hearing you right, thinking I'm just here to film this boring stuff, and then all of a sudden you realize there's actually some great content and experience to be gleaned from this moment that I wasn't awake to.
I wasn't aware of it. And that's such a huge, in my industry, I think in every industry, some of these things are hard to get into. And we work so hard to get into some of these jobs, and we're miserable when we get there because it's not exactly what we thought it'd be. That could be good or bad. I didn't think that my boss would be such a jerk, or whatever it is. I thought the pay, whatever our preconceived conception of where that arrival was is slightly different. And then we're frustrated about that. Well, that's no good. What good is that? That's just a frustrating place to be. And I wish I could go back and tell my younger self, just breathe a minute. Sure, you're not where you want to be, but where you are is not that bad. Being miserable about your place in life does you no good. If you've ever read books there's a book called The Happiness Advantage.
I've read that book.
Have you read it?
Yeah.
And it talks about the joy. The power of joy in your life. And one of the things that really struck me in that book was how your mind is more active when you approach something with joy. So for example, let's say your door doesn't close right at the house, right? It doesn't latch properly. Well, you can look at this problem in one of two ways. You could either go, doggone it, stupid door.
That's how maybe I need to reread the book, because that's usually how I approach that situation.
Right? So you throw the tool and I hate this crap. That's how I am. I'm not a mechanical person. Or you can go, all right, we got a problem to fix, ladies and gentlemen. And how can I fix this door?
Mine usually involves a phone number.
Yeah, well, the point is you can either, that's my solution.
Hello,
too.
I heard you're a door
Who
fixer.
do I know who can fix doors? Well, your mind, when you approach a problem, whatever it is, with positive, like, all right, it's a challenge. How can I overcome this one? As opposed to, doggone it, figures just happened to me. Your mind is 30% more active. It actually activates your mind to be stronger when you approach it with okay, challenge, all right, accepted. I will overcome this. Your mind is actually more active when you approach it that way. Your brain shuts down when you think of things in negative ways.
Have you read the book Triggers?
I have not.
That's a great one. A little bit different take, but I think maybe the setup than for what you're describing too, where he talks about you've got to, it would be a more prudent way for you to approach things, to think of your life as this third party that's, I'm paraphrasing here, actively trying to get you to lose it, right? Mm-hmm. Things are going to happen, kind of to your point, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we all go through every day expecting our car's going to start, the door's going to latch, people are going to be agreeable, and then, or the person who we haven't gotten along with is suddenly going to see things our way. That's not realistic, right? You're setting yourself up for failure, is this author's point. It's a great, great book. I highly recommend anyone. I bring it up all the time. But when you have that, understanding it's part of that. And I've got to do that. I mean, I think like a lot of people, you're like, it's going to be this day where I feel good. I feel like I look good. The house is clean. Doors are latching. Like, no. And you're gonna let a lot of time slip by in misery waiting for that moment.
If you're gonna sit there and wait for a sunny day before you try to go for something, you'll never get there. And so many things happen through adversity. Yeah. Adversity oftentimes. I mean, think about how good you feel when you like I'm a mountaineer. Like when you get to the top. Hell yeah. Or when you finish writing that book, and so a lot of times the harder it was to finish the goal, the better you feel at the end of it. Yeah. Like adversity is a lot of times good. There's a great story. I wish I could remember this guy's name, but a guy it was back in the, I think, 1800s, and this guy's couldn't afford the best room on the ship that they were traveling on. Yeah. So their room was next to the engine room. Oh, and they could hear the engines. And he was just so angry. Like, oh, this room sucks. I can't get any sleep. I'm so miserable. And he just was whining and complaining the whole time. And finally his wife says, okay, you're killing me with this attitude here. Like, you're not getting anywhere doing it. Like, why don't you try to turn this into a positive? Why don't you think of this in a great way? Maybe the engines can help you. He goes, so he's like, all right. Well, it is rhythmic, so maybe I could like write some poems to it or something. And he starts to write, not on a boat, not in a moat, I do not like green eggs and ham. Oh, man. And suddenly he writes a poem, and his name is Dr. Seuss, the guy who wrote it. And because of this huge, of this adversity moment, instead of pissing and moaning and getting down in the dumps, he decides to like, all right, how can I approach this in a creative way and turn it around? And he built his whole life exploded from that. And the same thing happened to me. So when I was doing these corporate videos and stuff, I was miserable. I was frustrated. I wasn't getting anywhere. So I thought. Mm-hmm. And one day I decided, okay, so I'm making instructional videos and all these different things. I'm not making movies. Well, how would Spielberg approach this job? And I watched Jurassic Park. Remember Jurassic Park?
Oh, yeah.
Remember the moment in the film?
94 Jurassic Park, right?
The only one we shall talk about? Yeah. The only one that exists. Well, remember in that movie, there's when they go to the park for the first time, the characters, and they're watching the video where it says, I'm DNA. This is how I do. We get dino DNA. Sometimes mosquitoes get trapped in the sap, right? And we could extract that. I forget the whole monologue, but you know what that is? That's Steven Spielberg making a training film. That's exactly what that is. That's what it would look like if Spielberg made a training film. Mm-hmm. Well, do you think he pissed and moaned and complained when he had to do that part of the movie? No. Like he just looked at it like, this is part of telling the story. So I started to think, okay, well, I'm not making the movie, so how can I just pretend I'm already making it and create and turn this upside down and like, okay, so it's a training film about how to make car parts. How can I turn this into something that like actually makes me excited? My entire career changed after that moment of just didn't matter what the project was. I'm just going to try to make it like
approach it with some joy and creativity.
And like, I'm just going to already pretend I am making the movie and the client's just going to go along for the ride with me. And my clientele changed.
Did you get any pushback?
No, actually it opened up doors because I started approaching the jobs for, number one, I was excited. Number two, like it was different than what they'd had before. And I've totally carved out a niche as a storyteller within corporate America. Now I do still do feature film work. That's what I'm in the middle of right now. But other jobs I get hired for are storytelling kinds of jobs. Like I just finished a job. Perfect example. I had a client come to me and they said, we want to create instructional videos on how to work with people who have different diseases and disorders. So the first one we want to make is for people with diabetes. So if the target audience is someone who's just been diagnosed with diabetes, we want to tell them how to live. Okay, this sounds boring, right? Like, you should probably eat more salad. You should probably go for a walk once a day, or things like that.
Sure.
Like, this on paper sounds like the most straight ahead, boring corporate video you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
Well, I said, okay, that's great. That's the job. But what if we make it a story instead of just a 5 bullet point video like you'd have in a brochure? Right. You're already going to give them the brochure in the doctor's office. Why not make it something they actually want to watch?
You're viewing in on someone. Yeah.
And if it's a story, that's something that really excites me, because storytelling is something that everyone loves. Plato once said, "He who tells stories rules society." Storytelling is a powerful medium. It's permeated our life. It's actually, there's more story in our lives today than in any other society in history, because we can go on YouTube, we can go on Netflix and look at a million stories right now. But on top of that, what do we do when we put our kids to bed at night? We tell them a story. Why? Because it relaxes them, or it gets them to dream, creates imagination. We tell stories to each other around the campfire to scare each other. Why? Because it's fun. We like to be scared. When we have high school reunions, we talk about the good old days. We tell stories about the past, of the good times and the bad times, right? We love stories, and they can influence people for good. I mean, when Top Gun came out back in the 80s, the recruitment rate for the Air Force skyrocketed because of a story. That's what stories can do, and they are powerful tools for companies. So I said, well, how about we make this something that the people who get diagnosed, your audience, wants to actually watch it because they want to know what happens next. That's a powerful thing for a company. You can create something that they actually want to see. Who wants to see a commercial, right?
Gotta hire this guy.
Yeah, right. I love what I do. So
in wealth management, the ultimate challenge.
So we created a choose your own adventure video where a guy gets diagnosed. Oh man! And with his
this could go to some dark places, though.
Well, no, we actually made it a comedy. Our goal was to create something like Modern Family, like the show Modern Family, with that kind of tone. The temptation would be to make a very sad, I got diabetes. Well, we made it like he's kind of funny, and his wife is hilarious, and his kid kind of makes fun of dad with the pot belly, and their awkward way of trying to figure out how to eat better. How do you eat better? Like, they have donuts sitting on display in the kitchen. Like, how do you get them past that kind of thing? Well, at the end of the pilot, we just finished shooting it. When I showed it to the board of directors, multiple people in the room had tears in their eyes. And one guy said, he goes, I'm pre-diabetic, and I just watched this video, and I'm inspired, because everything that guy's dealing with, I deal with. Like, I think I could probably go run now. Like, holy crap, from a story, from the most boring corporate video you could imagine, just by approaching it in a way that I identify, like a movie, which is what I like to make. It started changing lives. It's not even released yet, and people are already wanting to make a change.
No,
that's
yeah, no, it's huge, and I think it's so important and an important message, maybe now more than ever, when cynicism is understandably high in society, and we're looking at things that are powerful tools, religion, politics, just storytelling, and it's, you know, any of these things, of course they can be used for evil or ill intent because they are powerful. But we can't give up on them because they're powerful, and that means they can be used for good. And you see so many people, we get on anything from, oh, it's smoke and mirrors, or you're trying to manipulate me, and it's like, well, yeah, and or story can be used to be powerful. Religion can be healing. Politics can create civil society and bring us together, right? There is for anything of substance, there's two sides to that, right? I mean, and it is true. It's something we talk about here, which is, you know, we're not just here to make a movie, make a plan. For us would be there's this person's whole life, right? That's art. Like, let's weave into their narrative. How do we foster the story that they want to write? How do we make them feel comfortable to dream and tell us their silly thoughts or their wildest ambitions? And what role can we play in? I mean, it always finds its way into that. Even Melissa, who we just had, in selling someone a home. I mean, a lot of places you can live and stay warm and have shelter, but there's another place that might feel like home, and the place that you want to raise a family or live in. And no, I'm with you. I mean, narrative is, again, it's, a lot of people think it can be silly, or they'll focus on the salesmanship or the manipulation, and it's like, it's just a very, again, to your earlier point about approaching things with joy or whatever, it's just a very cynical thing. It can lead to some powerful good. Yeah,
I could wax. I don't know how much time we have. I could wax philosophical.
I'll come down to LA.
Come down to LA.
This is why Rogan's got 4-hour podcasts. So, So when did you Nashville? You're in LA now.
Yeah. So I went from Nashville. I moved to
doing
Spokane
some feature
for a couple
films.
Years. Just finished one. Or last day of shooting's tomorrow.
What took you to LA? And there was a stop here in Spokane.
There was. So I had
you had to meet Dane Coleman.
I know Dane. That was a dark time.
Standing in the background. Is that too much to unpack? We'll do that in the sequel. It inspired all these scary movies I started shooting.
I was in Spokane only for a couple of years. I wanted to get closer to home because my family was in Portland. If I were to be honest with myself, I'd probably say I was just scared to go to LA. LA is Super Bowl.
Right.
That's where, if you go there, you have no more excuses.
Yeah.
Like, if you go there and you don't succeed, well, why is that? There's no, if I don't live there, I can, like, well, you know,
I could have gone.
I could have been great.
I didn't even want it.
But here's something, I think this applies to life and to art. There's a book called Art and Fear. It's a great book. It's a very short book. I think it could apply to anyone, because you don't have to work in the arts to be an artist, because I've seen surgeons get lost in their work the same way I get lost in mine. Probably the same for you. Like, creating something for someone, whether that's a financial plan or a lawyer's document or a case in court or something, you can get lost in that work in the same way I get lost in, like, creating a story.
Sure.
However, one thing that book talks about is it's way easier for me to talk about how great I could be, or how great like, for example, in my case, I have this great idea for a movie. So many people tell me that. And I usually say, yeah, have you written it? Well, no. Well, why not? Well, I haven't done it. And the reason why is most of us have great ideas for things we could do, and we usually don't do them. And the reason why is because it's always going to be way better in your head than it ever is in life.
Or it's going to take a ton of work to get it out.
Well, it's terrifying because that idea in your head is perfect, because it hasn't been committed to anything solid yet. Like, if I'm writing a story, I can say, oh man, it's this great story about a cowboy who finds a mermaid or whatever.
My daughter's,
I just made that
my
up.
daughter's in already. My daughter's in already. I'd be forced to buy it on iTunes tomorrow if that movie came out.
I might even,
Cowboys and Mermaids.
yeah, but I might even be able to convince you how great that idea is, as long as I don't. And you could even believe me, but if you never actually read the hard script, the minute I say daytime on a beach, I'm committing to specific things. It's no longer can be said at night on a mountain. It's daytime on a beach. And from there, my choices, the further I walk, the narrower the story becomes. And it's the same whether you're starting a company. I could make the greatest ad agency you've ever seen. Okay, well then start it and let's just see if that's right. Because now, once it's in the world, people can judge it.
Totally.
I say all that because I, it's easy to say, oh man, if I could move to LA and people discover me, it'd be great. And I can say that all day long if I don't live there. Yeah. But once I make that commitment to expose myself like that, well, now reality happens.
Well, and people want to hide behind a few things I think you've touched on there. Number one, we all have to be creative. May manifest in different ways, but I'll hear people and then I want to get to kind of, the passion that people need to have and the work ethic. But people are like, "Oh, I'm not creative," or "I'm not into sales," and I'm like, if you're part of life, you need to be able to tell stories in whatever way you do. It could be a doctor explaining how you're going to get through the thing, to use your medical note. It could be me explaining how we can get you from here to there in your financial life. For you, it would be within the context of that training video. Like, embrace it, right? You're selling yourself to everyone all the time. This is why you should be my friend. This is why we should get married. This is why we should do business together. This is why you should be part of my project. So I think as soon as people get that and then realize then that the key to whatever it is, then finding that those things are inescapable. But can you find, whether that's film, medicine, marketing, can you find something that inspires enough passion within you for you to embrace the work ethic that's going to help that fully manifest? Because that's where it all falls apart for people, right? Yeah. They're like, to your point, the filling in of the blanks between the four pillars of the great story that are going to make for a great 2-hour experience to get into your world. That's a ton of work, right? The concepts people might have rallying around, but all the rest that are, hey, I've got this idea for a company. Great. How are you going to hire? What vendors are you going to use? How are you going to go get clients? Oh, you're right. I'll just stay at my own. And again, there isn't a right answer for that other than hopefully for people uncovering that passion and then how to do it. So you're here in Spokane. You're facing that art, fear, this challenge, and you make the move. Like, can I stop you? May I ask kind of a personal question that I think gets lost sometimes? You're married?
Yep.
When did you meet your wife? And because part of the thing that gets lost in chasing passions and entrepreneurships and businesses, there are often other people along supporting us and as part of that, and that these choices and struggles and frustrations that might manifest in anger, that somebody else is along for all of that, right?
It's funny you bring that up.
Do you mind talking a little bit about how how did that go, and how do you work through that within the context of a relationship? Because if that's a huge component to this whole success, right?
And I'm very lucky because my wife, 'cause doing what I do, you can either make a lot of money or none.
Right.
And I was on the none side for a long time.
Or you can talk about taking these steps back. You're like, what do you mean what do you mean our paycheck's half of what it was, right?
My first movie the budget was $12,000. And I shot for 6 weeks or something like that. I don't even remember how long.
With some costs, let alone life.
Well, I'm not bringing any income in. Yeah. So like, my wife could have made me get a corporate job, which would have destroyed me. Like, for years, we gave up kids to pursue this. Like, the amount that I've sacrificed a lot. The amount that she has sacrificed is no comparison to what I've sacrificed. Like, she has stood by me the whole way and never made me.
That's huge.
And she always, she would constantly encourage me. Even just this morning,
she smack you when you got a little angry
sometimes
during the corporate gig and say, hey, pull it together. Because that's important too sometimes, right? The accountability.
Well, like today, so like I'm doing this movie and I'm exhausted because a standard day on a movie set is 12 hours. That's where it starts. Right. Standard. That doesn't account if you get up there early to prep, when you watch dailies at night, easy 15, 16 hours a day without even blinking an eye. You do that for week after week after week after week. You get exhausted and you get discouraged and you get down, and self-doubt can creep in. And even today, like I'm really tired at the moment because we just went through this movie, and I was asking my wife before we got up, like, man, you think this is going to be any good? She's like, come on. Slap me. She goes, no, I've been watching the monitor and it's fantastic stuff. This is going to be something amazing. Yeah. And I said, this is really funny. I said, you think so? She goes, why don't you just say thank you? Just say thank you. Just shut up and stop doubting me and just say thank you. For that.
Yeah.
And she's right. And she's been like that the whole way through. And awesome. And you're absolutely right. When you're a type A person, you're driven like I am. The people that are often stomped on the most and forgotten the most are the silent ones next to you, who are making you dinner when you get home after you've busted your butt all day long, or taking the kids, dealing with them while you're out doing it. I
mean, there's the path. There's undoubtedly people who are just pathological. I'd like to think I'm not. I'm sure you aren't. But to your point about being driven, I remember going at one point having a conversation with Milk. I think I've talked about it on this podcast before, and was going through some tough things, and knew just enough to know, hey, tough things open up your vulnerabilities and your willingness to listen, right? Like maybe case in point, even in some ways with your conversation this morning with your wife around the vulnerabilities of the movie, and talking with him, he's like, look, you're very driven, extremely focused, and I know you have a good heart and that you do what you do even to the extent that it's about bettering yourself with the idea of, well, then I can help or take care of other people. But you have to understand, a lot of the time when you got your head down doing your thing, that's not how it comes off to those around you, unless they really, really know you. And even then, they just may not like it. And I think that's an important part, again, that gets lost. And when I talk to people, it's not that it made me, and continually, because I realized, okay, this is how I'm wired. It's always what's going to become the natural thing that I'm going to pull back to as a part of gravity, but it's not a healthy way to have relationships. Yeah. Nor is it how I want to treat people, again, whether it's intentional or not. But when I talk to people, I'll say, kind of your point, either you need to walk a lot of this journey by yourself, even in unless your dad or mom or somebody was in the business, it's a hard business to get into. You just don't break into it. It tends to have a lot of nepotism in it. Getting to, obviously,
same with film.
Huge, a lot of things, right, that I think people would chase. There's just a very narrow funnel. So I'm like, and you might have to take some step backs, including financially. So you either need to walk this alone and bear that burden by yourself, which might be the easier path, or you need to do, obviously what you found and are blessed to have in your wife, which is someone who really genuinely understands, to the best you might even know, what you're about to go through, because it's a hard path. Yeah, it is a hard path.
Yeah, absolutely. There's two things I want to say. One is, I'm going to say this out loud so I don't forget.
Please.
To go to it next. One is it's all about who you know. Yep. I want to make sure I go back to that. But the other is that if you're a driven person, entrepreneur, there's going to be people around you that support you that is easily forgotten. But the way you remember them is that if you are a driven person, you are probably a goal setter. Like, I know for me, I'm very big on, at the beginning of the year, I like New Year's resolutions. Yep. I actually do them on my birthday rather than...
When's your birthday?
January 4. So it conveniently lines up. But why is yours January 4? What? Yeah. No way. 2 Capricorns in the house.
Felt it.
I like to say, by the time I turn X date, I'm going to do this. And I usually stick to that. Yeah. But don't only make business goals. If I'm going to say I'm going to land 4 clients or a client a month or whatever, great, that's fine. But what are your marriage goals? Like, how many of you ever actually sat down and went, you know what I want to do this year? I want to take every quarter, I'm a weekend getaway with my wife, or whatever it is. I would like to
fix the door that won't latch.
It's
I
really
made my wife happy.
This is how you stay in touch with life. True. Like, because the one thing that's a tendency to do for people like us is to burn out. Like you push so hard in one area of your life that you neglect everything else.
Yeah.
Health is another one.
Yeah.
Like I do a lot of yoga.
Yeah.
That's really important to stay fit and healthy, because that will help you actually with your job. You cannot pour yourself into just the one thing all the time, because you need time away from that.
Well, there's no way, and there's no way that the 90 minutes to 2 hours, if you were going to take half of that time to work out and to focus on family, which sadly, given how much time we spend working, but if you could do, there's no way whatever you're going to do with that time is going to be better spent, right?
You need
to give up your health, to have your marriage fall into disrepair, to not be the parent you want to be if you've got kids.
What's the point?
Yeah.
Like what are you doing all this for?
Right.
Like goals with your kids, goals for your health, goals for play. Like that's a tough one for me, to just take time once a week to play. Go throw a Frisbee around in a park and just turn off the computer, leave your phone at home on purpose, and just like do something that actually, I started doing jujitsu a year and a half ago, and that has been a life changer for me. Because
this is gonna have to definitely be maybe a 3-part series.
Down there. Come on down. Jiu-jitsu, which is great, is I cannot tell you how many times I've gone to the gym, stressed about something I'm working on, and when you get on the mat and somebody's going to try to choke you out. Well, guess what I'm not thinking about anymore? I'm not trying to think about the stupid client that won't listen to me or whatever. Right. I'm thinking about surviving and doing the skills. Yeah. And by the end, I'm physically tired, and I usually feel fantastic at the end. Yeah. I mean, I know you do CrossFit. It's probably the same for you. Like, you're like, it gives you this release. Yeah, totally. And then your brain can like reset and recharge and go back to it. So having goals for all these other things is super vital. But the other thing I was going to say, who you know. And this is a tricky one, because one thing everyone always asks me is, how do you get clients? That's always the big question. How do you get people through the door?
Same in my line of work. Yeah.
And now I know for me, it's not the same in every industry, but for me, I'm self-employed. I have my own company, but more importantly, it's Jason Satterlund, the director, that's the product. So it's similar to whether you're a massage therapist or a house builder, like it's your name that's for sale, or if it's Jason Satterlund Productions, it'd be that whole thing. For my case, it's Big Puddle Films. It's essentially my personality on this product. Every person, I am always on sale. Like, you have to look at every person like a potential client. Yeah. However, what's important is, have you ever and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here.
We were going to talk about this in the last podcast and didn't get to it. Just relationships and being relational and understanding that concept, and yet not, pardon the expression, just like completely whoring yourself out and looking everyone as a means to an end, right? But
there's another, well, and I hope this isn't out of turn, but have you ever gone to an Amway meeting? Have you ever had anyone try to sell you on it?
Yes.
Or I had
someone approach me at the Spokane Valley Mall about that, but I did not do it.
So what happens with that, and this is I bring this up because it's a danger, and anyone who does that kind of thing, they're trained to sell, right? Now, I'm not saying that's bad, but like one of the things that they'll tell you in things like that is to use the person's name a lot. So when I'm sitting there talking with someone, they're like, "You seem like a smart guy, Jason." And they keep using my name in every sentence. Now I get the philosophy behind that, but they're reading a script.
Get you to say yes 4 times within the first minute, just to anything, so you've become agreeable.
So if you read sales books, they will tell you this kind of thing. But what that does is you're essentially sitting at a computer typing on it to try to force a result. And you stop looking at the other person as a friend. It's like dating. So if you're dating somebody, the worst thing to say is, "I just really wish I had a spouse." Like if I said, if I was looking, ask any women listening, if we were on a date and I said, "Man, I just really wish I had someone," and got married, how quickly would you be out the door?
Guy or girl, this is great.
Right? That's the best way to not. But if you're just my approach is, I think I said at the beginning, he who dies with the most friends wins.
Yeah.
There is no downside to making a new friend. And whether or not, like, let's say you and I, we just met. Well,
which is true.
Yeah, it is.
But now
true.
we're best friends.
We're
right?
best friends. Well, if I just look at you as a new friend,
birthday buddies. Yeah.
And if it works into business, great.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, what's the downside?
Mm-hmm.
I have a new friend. Okay, big deal. So what it does is it immediately releases the pressure. Now, in my industry, there are networking events, and I think a lot of industries have these. I don't know if yours is.
I hate them.
Everybody hates them. Well, why? Because it's speed dating. You're immediately forced to try to make a business connection.
Right.
It becomes a desperate, needy thing.
Instead of just like, let's get to know as many people as we can.
Yes.
Get to know.
So here's a perfect example. I went to a networking event once, and I met this guy who only was there because of his wife. He wasn't even from America. He's only there because of his wife. He was into windsurfing. And I was thinking to myself, oh, whatever, who cares? Like, okay, he's not in my industry, big deal. And we just started talking about windsurfing. He seemed like a cool guy. He and I ended up hanging out. Yeah. Well, because of that connection, I got introduced to his wife, and we all three of us ended up doing a lot of projects together. He became a great client. Like, it was all because of the approach of because the normal approach in a networking event, if you started talking to someone and they said that, oh, you're not even in my industry? Oh, okay, well, I guess I shouldn't talk to you.
You can feel that letdown. I think every industry is so much like this. I know. I had a good friend of mine, client of mine, talking about this advisor in town. I was like, hey, let's go golfing. And actually a couple different people, two totally different individuals. And, after a few rounds, like, who are you working with for your wealth management need? I'm with Tim at 10 Capital. Oh yeah, how's that go? Oh no, really good. Brought it up again. Hey, just I really like this, but totally happy where I'm at. Nice to hear, but just dead to the world, right? Mm-hmm. Like, never went out. I'm like, what a horrific. And every industry, every town, every world's so small. That reputation's gonna get out. Mm-hmm. And the miserable, I would talk about it with my grandfather. I'd be like, it's kind of like doing a lot of things, eating healthy and working out so that you're in shape, doing the right thing so that, these whole concepts of karma, it's true. And I'd be like, well, how do I know? He's like, as long as you're asking the question, you're on the right side of it, right? So to your point, just that self-accountability and reflection of am I looking at Jason for Jason and who he is and just letting and being who I should be in this moment. I've had so many different things where activities from the past or people I've known in the past suddenly come around and know they're a client. There's no way, nor was it the case, that 20 years ago I knew that Adam would ping into that one and this one and that one, and then this thing would fall out of the tree. But there is a truth to that you just have to trust. Yeah, absolutely. And not, to your point, try to force into some artificial moment or just this one relationship, right?
Yeah, some of my best clients are friends I went to school with 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. Because I could easily come into this office and look at you like, I wonder if they ever do film. Like that, that's, I'm wired. I mean, you're probably thinking the same, like if you run a business and you're trying to get work all the time. Yeah. And it's essentially, clients are like, you're trying to fill a bathtub with water, but the drain is out. That's what it's like. Yeah. Because they're always going to be leaving. They're either going to be, I don't know, whatever, they don't need your services anymore.
Taking money for retirement, right? I mean, you always have to be like, hey, we didn't just make this money. In my world, we'll talk about time, well, but we don't really lose clients. How do we? I'm like, no, but people want the money that they saved up, right? It doesn't just sit here in perpetuity for all time. Right. You're like, oh yeah. All of a sudden you're like, but we lose tens of millions of dollars a year, not because we lost you, but because you wanted to go do some stuff with your resources, right? So yeah, projects. Certainly, some clients just leave.
They leave. They switch teams.
Pass on, they switch teams. Stuff happens. Yeah.
So it's a bathtub that the drain is out at the bottom and it's constantly losing water. So you're always trying to fill the tub, but it's always going down. Maybe close to brimming over, but it's still draining out the bottom. Well, that can, if you let it, it can create a little bit of a sense of desperation, just like dating. Like, oh, I'm single. Oh, I gotta find someone. Clock's ticking.
Best place to,
That's a terrible way to think about it.
It's not the best way to approach things, right?
Well, and this is very much like directing actors, by the way. I could look at you like a potential client, which immediately shuts off the human connection. You become a thing like an object to acquire.
Right. Yeah.
That's no way. And I've had the reverse of that when, I'm a director. So everyone wants to work with me. They know I'm a guy who hires. Actors especially will come up to me and like, can you look at my work? You just feel the desperation and the need the minute they come into contact with you. Like I can tell they're not really interested in me.
Well, it
personally.
creates an interesting accountability or perspective, don't you? Because I know for me, there's times where we'll role play here where you're calling me to do it. I'm like, Jason, quit pestering me. Don't you understand I have things to do? Like call Dane and try to get his business. And you're like, oh, that's a little hypocritical, right? Yeah. But yeah, just always trying to pull that subconscious thought forward and approach things in the right way. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's just, if you could take that aside for just a second and just look for the connection first, number one and always. And that's the same with actors. Like when you work with an actor, their job is to emote, which is a weird thing to try to get. The tendency that happens to a lot of actors is the director comes up and tries to be angrier. That's like pushing a button to try to spit out angry.
Right.
Well, they're not approaching them like a person. They're approaching them like a machine.
Right.
Like I'm going to type in and try to get this specific result. It's the same with working with people and potential clients. You first want to be their friend and just see if there's some sort of connection, because if there's not, they're not going to be that much fun to work with anyway. You may not even get it just because they don't click with you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, we'll move on. There's plenty of other people in the world,
right.
But it also means that the more friends you have, the more clients there are. But if you're approaching them with a friend first,
it's the byproduct,
and they see that you care about them personally, it just makes it all better.
It changes things. I think we're gonna have to wrap it up there. We didn't even get to like anything.
Oh, was there an agenda?
Well, the agenda was getting to know you, but you know a lot of stuff, Jason. So we didn't get to you going to LA, which would seem to be a great sequel for We'll Come to LA.
Come to LA. Come on, anytime
we're
you like.
invited. I'm gonna be there the first full week in June. I'm just saying, we could do this on a tiny little whatever. It doesn't have to be super fancy. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
This has been a real pleasure. I always love meeting another January 4th guy. I know a couple of them. I think you're the coolest one I've met. So
Capricorns.
We'll do it again soon.
Yeah, man.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Absolutely.
And we're done.
Oh, wait. Did you stop recording?
No, go ahead. Bonus feature.
Jason's
this is just like a movie.
Well, you can follow me.
Please,
so
please.
my name is Jason Satterlund.
I'm a rookie, so forgive me.
Should have done this at the top, but my my name is spelled Jason. Standard. My last name is Satterlund, and you can follow. But my website is Jason Satterlund. My Instagram is Jason Satterlund. Facebook,
just
all that.
At Jason Satterlund, full, all spelled out. And your newest movie, the one you're here shooting,
it's called The Suppression.
What's it about, real quick?
It's about a soldier who gets hit with a beam of light in the middle of a battlefield. And
modern time, future, present?
Ooh, that's a spoiler.
Oh, okay.
And he
shifting.
I would say soldier an American soldier in Iraq.
Okay.
So
gets hit with the beam of light.
And he wakes up in a room with no windows, doors, exits of any kind, and he has no idea who put him there. And he has to escape. And it's a mystery, thriller, sci-fi adventure. It's sort of like Escape Room meets The Cube meets like a Saw kind of an angle.
What was the one where Ryan Reynolds woke up in a coffin?
Buried. It's like Buried. It's like that.
My now wife, Rachel, walked out of the movie. Hated it. I about lost it when the snake came in. But anyway.
Oh, that's awesome. But Jason Satterlund's website or Big Puddle Films is my company. You can go to either one of those.
The Suppression. Well, thank you. Can't wait to do this again soon.
Yes.
Maybe a regular.
I'm happy to.
We could be our first regular.
We can talk about jiu-jitsu.
That's a whole different, animal that I would like to get into.
Triangle choke.
There's a whole bunch of different things. Podcast within the podcast. All right. Thank you.